All right, folks, we got another one today. Today's topic, as always, is all about creating a sense of belonging. Dr. Sheldon Eakins here, your host. Let's get right into it. Today's topic is why students disengage and how to bring them back. So if you're an educator, your principal, whatever your role is, staff, whatever it is, you work at a school, we notice sometimes students will disengage for whatever reason. We'll talk about some of the reasons that lead to disengagement. We'll talk about how that impacts their abilities to be successful in school and beyond. And then also, you know me, I'm going to give you some strategies on what we can do to support our students that need a little additional support when it comes to re-engagement of our students. Now, with that being said, I want to start off by saying this. Disengagement is not a lack of motivation. It's often a response to unmet needs. One of the things I like to say a lot is the importance of understanding that how a lot of our students, they have a story to share. So a lot of their behavior is as a result of a story, something that they have going on. With that being said, students disengage because they may feel unseen. They may feel like their needs aren't being met. And it's our job as educators to re-engage our students. And the way we can re-engage our students is through consistency and care. All right, I want to talk about what does disengagement look like? Well, some signs are frequent absences or tardiness. We're going to touch on chronic absenteeism because I know that's a big challenge. And it's not just for our middle and high school students. It also is prevalent in our early grades as well. Early childhood, kindergarten, those kind of things. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. But frequent absences or tardiness are signs of disengagement. Zoning out or sleeping in class. Now, let me tell you this. Not only is zoning out and sleeping in class a challenge of disengagement, but we often see this perpetuated in our schools as well. This is a result, or this is also an exclusionary practice. And here's what I mean. Follow me for a second. If we allow our students to sleep in class, that is exclusionary practice. We're talking about sense of belonging. We want our students to be engaged. Sometimes we see a student in class. Maybe it's a student that's, you know what, I'm tired of waking this kid up all the time. It's 8 a.m., first hour. They're always sleeping for whatever reason. It's easier to just let them sleep and not bother them. Oh, you know, they work 10 hours every day and they get in at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. because they're working at the gas station. And so we just allow them to sleep, not considering how this is an exclusionary practice. So we need to talk about how we can re-engage our students, especially those who are zoning out, sleeping in class. Refusing to do work is another example of disengagement. Student doesn't want to do it. Nah, I'm not doing this, teacher. That is another example of disengagement. And then avoidance behavior, such as frequent bathroom breaks. They got to go to the nurse. They're sick. There's always something. And so that is another sign of disengagement. And the last one is disruptive behavior or withdrawal. So they're acting out in class. And I've talked about disruptive behavior and what that could look like. And I have a book coming out soon that's going to be talking about the culture clash. So be on the lookout for that. I can't stress enough how if we allow these practices to continue on, because maybe it's easier or maybe we've tried and it just doesn't seem to work, whatever it might be, these are exclusionary practices when we allow these things to continue. Frequent absences, zoning out, sleeping, refusing to do work, avoidance behaviors, disruptive behavior, or withdrawal. If we allow these things to continue and not try to intervene, one, we are not harnessing a sense of belonging where students feel accepted, supported, and included. And two, we are perpetuating this. And sure, it's a village effort. We want support from home. Obviously, we want our students to be engaged as well. And then, of course, as staff members, we want to be a part of this intervention process. With that being said, some students disengage by flipping desks. Others do it by disappearing right in front of us. This is why I'm spending a lot of time on the stuff that we don't necessarily see. These are the things that are Like if I see disruptive behavior, yeah, that's obviously okay. There's a way that we're going to address this, and disciplinary things and all that kind of jazz. But when we're talking about the stuff that's subtle, stuff that the kids aren't saying anything, they're not telling your story, if you will. It's not open and out there. But when we're seeing stuff such as disappearing, not showing up to class, withdrawing, sleeping right in front of us, these are where those challenges are. So let's talk about some of the reasons behind disengagement. Why do students disengage? I want to share with you 5 different reasons why a student might disengage. They don't feel safe. We talk about Maslow, hierarchy of needs. I talk about this a lot. Safety, at the least. For a lot of our students, we don't know where their situations are, but for a lot of our students, school is that safe haven. So if they don't feel safe at home, they don't feel safe in their neighborhood, and they don't even feel safe in their school, imagine where else are they going to go? They don't feel seen. That touches on identity, culture. Their learning needs might be ignored. They're just lumped into the general population. They're expected to do everything that everyone else is doing at the same speed as everyone else. This is a pace that we're going in my classroom. They don't feel seen. The content that they get doesn't reflect any of their identities. The curriculum doesn't have much interest, or they can't relate, or they don't see the point or purpose behind the work that they're getting. They don't feel seen. How about they don't feel successful? They've gotten a bunch of F's. They're getting zeros. They're struggling academically. Again, they're not getting the support that they need. Or reverse, they don't feel challenged. It's too easy. Feel bored. And then there's a lack of connection. I am who I am, but I can't seem to relate to anybody. I'm being bullied, being teased. I feel ostracized and lack the connection that I need in order to be successful and to feel as if I'm a valued member of the school community. Finally, they don't see the relevance. Again, we talked about the curriculum. Why do I need to do this math? I'll never use this. How does this impact me outside of these 4 walls in this classroom? They don't see the relevance. Therefore, they disengage. Now, in order to really move forward when we're talking, because I'm saying engagement, and it's important that not only do we talk about the engagement, but we also bring something else that I think is very important, and that's motivation. They're not the same. See, student engagement and motivation are different. Student engagement is the level of attention, the effort, and emotional investment that students bring to their learning. How much effort am I willing to put into this assignment that I was given? Versus student motivation, which is the internal drive or external influence that pushes students to engage in learning. Let's dig into this even further. Student engagement goes beyond compliance. It's about the curiosity and how a student actively participates and how they feel connected to what they're learning. So when students are engaged, they see the value in their education and they take ownership of their progress, and they're more likely to persist through challenge. They want that challenge. True engagement shows up in how students think, how they show up in class, and how deeply they connect with the learning experience versus the motivation. Student motivation is that, again, internal drive or external influence that pushes them to engage in learning. It's that fuel. It's the gas. All right. So maybe I'm at home and I need to get to school or I need to get to work. That's the engagement side. I got to get there. The motivation is that gas. Tank got to have some gas in it in order to get to my destination. Let's talk about some engagement characteristics. What could that look like? What are some characteristics? There's 3 things. There's the behavior engagement. So participating in the academic and social activities. Then there's the emotional engagement. Again, positive and negative reactions to teachers, classmates, academics, and school. And then finally, the cognitive investment in learning and the willingness to exert the effort necessary to comprehend complex ideas and master difficult skills. However, with all that being said, I want you to understand that while motivation can exist without engagement, so I can be motivated. Again, I got the gas, But motivation does not necessarily equal engagement. That's why they're different. That's why you got to look at them differently. Because a student, for example, may value education. Maybe they're getting pushed, being grounded for bringing home a B or a C or a D. Maybe that's part of the motivation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're engaged. How many families do we know or people do we know where their trajectory is already laid out for them from the day that they're born? The child from birth knows, I'm going to be a doctor, or I got to be an attorney, or I got to be this, or I'm going to be a teacher. Their plan is already laid out. They may not be engaged in the work, but because they are pushed, there's that motivation. But I want to make sure that we're understanding that motivation does not equal engagement. However, engagement typically reflects the presence of motivation. So Barkley and Major 2020 proposed that student engagement is the product of motivation, the driving forces of an individual's behavior and active learning. What students do to build their skills. It is important to understand that the mix of motivation and active learning is unique to each individual, and engagement is not stable over time or for an individual person. Let's talk about the 4 modes of engagement. There's 4 different modes of engagement, what research says. See if you can identify a student that fits in one of these categories. And not a big fan of labels, but this is helpful for you as you're identifying certain traits within students. The first one is the resistor. The resistors use what power they have to let their teachers know that school is not working for them. They avoid or disrupt their learning, and they refuse to do homework, derail class, and skip school. All right, maybe you can identify these traits. The passenger, coasting in low gear, showing up, doing the bare minimum, sometimes bringing home high grades, but never fully engaging in their work. Uninterested and risk developing the learning habits necessary to navigate school and work. Then there's the achiever mode. They are highly motivated and expend tremendous energy doing well in school, getting top marks on exams and studying for hours on end. Teachers love them and encourage them, but there's that pressure, and they are often fragile because there's these expectations, and if they feel as if they don't meet those expectations and they let someone down because they're expected to be at a certain level, come home with that C, they can be very fragile. Imagine what tolls that can take on their mental health. And then the last one is the explorer mode, the actual pinnacle of the engagement mountain, getting good grades, but are also resilient learners who build skills that help them thrive, achieve, but don't wilt when trying new things or stumbling a bit along the way. I think it's important that when we're talking about re-engaging students, that it's hard to not discuss chronic absenteeism. Okay, it's a challenge that we see a lot in the United States. Let's look at some statistics. Chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10%, right? So 18 days, all right? So we're thinking normal school year is 180 days. They're missing at least 10%, 18 days of school has grown significantly since COVID-19. During the 22-23 school year, nearly 1 in 3 students was chronically absent, with even higher rates for students with disabilities, students of color, and students learning English as a second language. How about this? Chronically absent students are more likely to fall behind in their studies and are 4 times as likely to drop out of high school. I mean, I feel like we don't need these statistics, like we know these things, but it's important that we don't forget that this is here, right? But it's not just our older students, okay? It also impacts our younger ones. Children who are chronically absent for multiple years between preschool and second grade are much less likely to read at grade level by the 3rd grade. I'm going to play a clip of this conversation, and they're talking about chronic absenteeism, and I want you to listen to the young lady as she's discussing some of the initiatives that they're doing out in Baltimore.
Strategies. What is working? What have you tried? What's not working? What is working?
No, and I think that that's the heart of the issue. And I do want to build off of this theme, relationships, because what we are seeing, just to verify what you're saying, is that the schools that have the most cohesive cultures that have the most fluid school climate, meaning there's not tons of disruption, there's not lots of chaos, are actually the ones that are making the most rapid progress along many continuum. And I think that's an important piece, that yes, it's chronic absenteeism, but it's also achievement. And so when we look at some of the characteristics of things that are working, for us, a lot of the focus that's been most successful is, one, making sure we're differentiating strategy. So on our pre-K, K focus, a lot of what we've seen is that, frankly, our community engagement specialists who come around, look at wraparound services, particularly in districts that have large numbers of young people coming from poverty. One of the things that we see is parents, in large part, aren't just always sitting home because of one reason. You don't bring your child to school for one reason. And the ability to connect on things like employment, on healthcare, on housing assistance, things that you can't expect a third grade teacher to do, but that this community engagement specialist actually does have time to do, make a difference. It also begins to build relationships with home and families where you can have some honest discussions about, actually, it is important to be in school every day. And we don't often like to talk about it, but post-pandemic, what we have seen is a rise in not only young people, but in families saying, so does it really matter if we're in school every day? And so how do we have those conversations as a larger community around the importance of being in school every day? But in order for those conversations to stick, at least in the community that I serve, relationship is what gives you the right to be able to say, actually, when it's raining is not a great time to say, let's just stay home today, right? Or pre-K is not just a play group. It's actually laying the foundation for some newfangled term called executive functioning, right? Which allows kids to develop processes. So I think what we're seeing in the early grades is that kind of partnership. In the upper grades, it is listening to young people. And one of the things they told us, particularly in places like Baltimore City, is the ability to generate income, to know that you can get a job, is going to pull young people away from something that they don't see the connection. And so one of my favorite examples of this is in one of our high schools. I met a young man who was in one of our career tech programs where through the construction program, they're actually renovating an abandoned property, which we have too many of in Baltimore City. And it's right across the street from the high school. And the young man's eyes lit up, right, as he was showing me through his work in carpentry in this school. And he was very frank about kind of the exchange that was occurring. Like, yeah, I'm more likely to come in the morning to get through that math class, to get through that history class, because I know I get to come across the street and work on this house. And that's what gives me joy. And I think when we talk about relevancy, we forget that for young people, being part of a community is belonging. It does not mean that you have to have a hands-on activity in the middle of calculus. What it really means is that, do I have adults working together, right, who are able to channel, right, what I kind of feel like is important with this piece called school, and a community will do it. And this young man was basically telling me, no, I actually don't feel that different about algebra. I'm not sure I'm thrilled about it. But you know what? Getting to algebra allows me to go do what I really love doing, and I get credit for it, right? It's not just extra. I get credit for it. And I think we've got to look at what time counts as learning time. And if it is only seat time, if it is only occurring at one point in a traditional school day, we have a generation of adolescents who have now tasted what it looks like to be freed from, right, the encumbrances. And, that deal with both families and young people looks very different now. And I think that's part of what we're seeing, is where we can make those connections in tangible ways. Yes, relationships, but relationships that make sense in the daily reality of families and young people.
You see the motivation there Now, shout out to her for what she's doing in Baltimore City and the work that's being done. But what I liked, there's a few things that I liked that I take from this response. One, I can appreciate her as a superintendent in the upper level, in the district level. She is connecting with students. She's asking them. Student voice is so important. If you want to make sure that students belong or feel as if they belong, the only way we can know is if we ask them. Not only that, but you hear what the young man said. He said, look, I will go to algebra because I know that after I go to school, I get the opportunity to do something I'm really passionate about, working in the building across the street. So if we're able to show students the relevancy of the learning that they're doing and helping them to have that motivation so that we can get that engagement. As I mentioned earlier in this video, motivation does not necessarily equal engagement. But you see the young man was willing to put in the effort in school so that he could do what he really loved to do. I like how they are working with connecting with families and telling, look, young ones, yeah, just because it rains outside doesn't mean you can stay home. You still got to come to school. So these are some really good examples of how we can re-engage students, whether if it's absenteeism, whether if it's withdrawal, sleeping in class, those kind of things. These are ways that we can impact the learning in a great way. With that being said, let's talk about some strategies for re-engagement. First one is peer leadership. This is an opportunity such as programs, and I've talked about affinity groups, the value of affinity groups, where students can see individuals who are sharing a lot of similar experiences, a lot of similar backgrounds. These are not exclusionary practices. I know like people will say, oh, well, that's exclusion. No. You had to keep in mind that having a space in which I can share with my classmates, my peers, some of the experiences that I'm having as part of a larger population in which those opportunities aren't always there. It's not exclusion. It's actually engagement. But peer leadership programs, there's research that shows that having mentoring programs, so you got maybe new students or under, lower grades getting paired up with upper grades. I know a lot of times the elementary level, we do reading buddy. We'll have maybe fourth and fifth graders, third and fourth graders, fifth graders come and work with the kindergarten, first and second grade. These are bonding opportunities. It creates leadership opportunities as well. In addition to, it helps students feel more connected to their school communities and improve attendance rates. How about student voice? We just saw a prime example, Baltimore City, where she's listening to the students, getting their feedback. In my upcoming book, What Are You Bringing to the Potluck? I talk about the value in student feedback options. Students, like you can walk up to a student and ask them how's their experience, and they may share with you, especially if you have a rapport and relationship with them. But then also putting suggestion boxes, anonymous suggestion boxes that are checked regularly to get feedback from students about their experiences. Surveys also, focus groups. Sometimes we just look at the numbers and, absentee is okay. Student was missing such amount of days. So we get the data from that standpoint, but quantitative data only shares one part of the story. We need that qualitative feedback as well. And then the last part is making learning relevant. I can't stress this enough. We hear cultural responsiveness all the time. We think there's so many challenges with cultural responsive teaching, but it's so valuable. There's research that backs this up. So connecting students with real world issues according to their interest and future goals. I am a big proponent of incorporating project-based learning. And again, you just saw a prime example, young lady in Baltimore City saying, this is what's working, project-based learning and curriculum that is relevant to students, not just stuff that we think they should learn and know, but stuff that they want to learn and know. That's how we get that engagement. I'm going to add one more strategy because I saw this on Facebook and I think it's really funny. And I'm going to share this with you. Take a look at this.
Nobody want us to go to class in school. Like, for real. I'm trying to do it. And he drinks all your things.
Oh, my mama ain't doing no work today. On phone now. Yeah.
Shout out to the school out in Dallas. Shout out to the school out in Dallas. Fair use, by the way. Maybe you've done this at your school. Put it in the comments. If you've done a teachers dress up as students day at your school, let me know. Put that in the comments. This is a great way to create a sense of belonging. I'm gonna explain why I like this type of activity in regards to, again, creating that sense of belonging. It's fun, it's playful. The comments are interesting because you have people like, oh, well, why y'all making fun of the students? See, y'all are the reasons why the kids come to school dressed this way and act this way. And I'm like, y'all are missing the point. I'm assuming it were non-educators that were making a lot of these comments. But here's why I like this example, why I like this dress up like students day. Here's why. One, it's breaking down barriers. Having the teachers dress up like students flips the script, and it shows students that educators are willing to step into their world. When you think about school, there's a hierarchy, or you got the staff, you got the principal, you got your assistant principal, or like, let's just call it your administrative team. You got your teachers, staff, everything like that. This is a great opportunity to break down some of those hierarchical barriers and create some mutual respect. The next thing about this example is it models vulnerability and sparks joy. By demonstrating in activities like this, it shows that our staff are like, we're cool, like we're people, like we're good. It breaks down a lot of the seriousness when it comes to academics. Sometimes we focus so much on testing and exams and homework and all these quizzes, and we forget the human side. We can be silly. We can have a great time. It's a great opportunity. And it also puts in, again, talking about the formula where students must feel accepted, supported, and included. This shows students that they are accepted. The next part is it strengthens community bond. It's not just about having a great time, but these are memories. These are things that students can look forward to, staff can look forward to. This is something that will have. Remember last year when Mr. Johnson dressed up as such and such, as Johnny? I always use Johnny. As David, this is a great opportunity to create bond and connectiveness because they're going through something at the same time. It creates that shared experience and, again, heightens your sense of belonging. The last one is it enhances school culture. Regularly incorporating lighthearted events contributes to a positive school culture. And it signals to students that the school values joy and connection, not just about academic achievement. Listen, these are just some examples of what it looks like when it comes to why students disengage from the classroom, from their schoolwork. We talked about student engagement, student motivation, and shared some ways that we can engage our students, re-engage our students. However, it's also important to note engagement isn't forever. It does require us to continue to show, not just say, but through our actions show that there is care and provide that comfort for our students. It's not a checkbox. It's not a single activity. It's not just, oh, well, we did teachers dress as student day. We're good, right? That's it. No, so much more. I don't want you to get discouraged. It is something that we have to constantly be working towards. If this video resonated with you, if this information is stuff that was relatable to you, please drop a comment. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure that you hit that subscribe and like button to this video as well. Support your boy. And if you are looking for workshops on creating a sense of belonging at your school, in your classroom, check out leadenequitycenter.com/consulting.